Hello, hi, and how are you? This is Coach Aaron Saft in the Running is Life podcast, coming to you after a rough time at the Tor Geants in Italy. And I appreciate everybody's support, their words of encouragement, sympathies. I'm not going to say it hasn't been a frustrating year. It's been a very tough summer, and I think I can attribute some of what transpired at Tor to just some of the things that happened prior to the race. I wasn't 100% mentally, emotionally. I've been challenged. I'll be honest. I'm always honest, and that's what I try to do in this podcast is be honest, because not everything is sunshine and rainbows. As unfortunately, I'm not going to be negative. I really enjoyed my experience, and I'm going to talk about some of that. I enjoyed my trip. I enjoyed my time with, my wife and one of my best friends, and Nathan. So there was certainly some great things that came away from that trip, other than the fact that I was injured. Being injured, it's tough. Especially when it happens in the race. And I kind of wrote kind of an update and posted a link, which I think the Instagram link, people are having a hard time with that. So I'm going to read through that here in a little bit, just to kind of voice it one more time and maybe expound upon a few areas. But I think in this podcast, if you're looking to do the Tor de Geants, I'm going to talk about some things that may help you, because there was a lot of things that I did not recognize. I'm thankful that I had resources in friends that have done it, Will and Martin and Nathan, and of course Rachel Blinn, who is another second-time finisher. She's finished 2 years in a row. I'm grateful to be her coach and be a part of that process, and I got to see her out on the course, which was phenomenal. So, I think let's just start with the registration process for Tor de Geants. And if this episode goes long, so be it. We're going to talk about quite a few things here. So, it was. It's an interesting entry process. I believe there's 60 spots for U.S. citizens in the lottery process. Now, there are ways to circumnavigate and circumvent the lottery system. For one, you can do fundraising. There is that option available. Now, I don't know how much you have to raise money for, or how much money you have to raise, but there is that option in order to bypass the lottery. So you can do that. There are also some races that you can do that will give you automatic entry if you finish into the Tor de Geants. And Jason Tishner, who finished this year, he did not. He got so close last year. I believe he had to stop at 196 due to bronchitis, which was amazing. But he did it this year, and he looked strong coming in. I got to see him finish, which was fantastic. My goodness. So you can race your way in. There are races that you can do to gain entry into the Tor de Geants, or you can raise funds, or you can hope for the best in the lottery. Now, that said, Rachel did not get in on the first draw into the Tor de Geants. Once they do the first draw, you have a certain amount of days to guarantee your entry. In other words, to pay the entry fee and state that you're racing. Those that deny or do not accept the entry, those spots become open, and if they have enough, they do a second lottery draw, and that's how Rachel got in. So even if you don't get in on the first lottery, pay attention and make sure that you put your name in for the second lottery draw to hopefully get in that way. It is inexpensive. In comparison to some of the entry fees that we see now for 200 milers, and this one is 200 plus, this entry fee it's not too bad. It's probably, I would say, about $1,500 in U.S. money, but it's evident in what these expenses go to. there's helicopters constantly going to supply aid stations to drop off supplies, to pick up runners. It's incredible, the logistics of this race, the food, the volunteers, everything. It's they do put everything back into this race. The logistics are just incredible. The aid stations are amazing. When I went into the one, just the amount of cots and blankets and massage therapists, there's just so much, and we'll talk more about that. But your entry fee is definitely, it's visible. You can see where this money is going. So I was encouraged by that because they put a lot into this event. So, first trying to get in, trying to get through, obviously multiple ways to do so. They were very, very good about communicating that the tunnel from Chamonix would be closed, and the route around, so if you're coming and flying into Geneva, would be quite a bit longer. We actually flew into Milan, and it was a simple drive from Milan to Courmayeur, where the race starts. We based ourselves in Courmayeur. There were plenty of options between hotels and Airbnbs, just so many places that you can stay. A couple that we met actually rent a camper van and just camped out by the packet pickup area. So lots of options, totally lots of options. And there's more places in the area. I know Jason stayed in Aosta. So this race takes place around the Aosta Valley, and there actually is a city of Aosta, and it's not far at all. And there's a lot of options there as well. So multiple places to be and stay, for this race. So plenty of good things there. The schedule there is a bit different. They are 6 hours ahead of us. Okay. So time change, a little bit different. Something that you can consider. The other thing is that they do not do breakfast as we are used to. So usually people get a cappuccino, maybe a croissant or a Danish or some kind of pastry, but there's not our normal breakfast that we're used to having. You don't go to some place and sit down for eggs and bacon and etc. This is they're very, very lunch and dinner focused. And the other part of it is that the hours are quite different. Restaurants close down typically somewhere between 2 and 3 p.m. They'll close down until 7 p.m. So making sure that you find a restaurant that's open sometimes can be challenging based on your schedule and what you're doing. So keeping in mind, that when you're planning your meals, even the night before, they do have a pasta dinner at the packet pickup for the runners. I think it was like €15 for anybody extra. So if you have crew with you, family, it's $15 a head for the pasta dinner. But the runner is free. So you can eat there. But the thing was, the pasta dinner didn't start until 8 p.m. So we didn't really want to stay up that late, even though the start times are 10 a.m. and noon. The 10 a.m. start is for those that have a higher ITRA rating, which is really tough for us Americans. We don't have a lot of ITRA scoring races here in the United States. So our ratings are typically low. So we typically get the slower start time, which is noon. The faster start is at 10 a.m. But again, having a pasta dinner at 8 p.m. wasn't really what we were looking for. So we ate at a restaurant right near our Airbnb, which was actually right near the finish, and it wasn't busy at all. So restaurants were kind of nice in that regard. We never had to wait long, and they're very fast with the food. Knowing some Italian does help. I did use Duolingo. I started that when we made our trip to Western States in June. I started doing Duolingo, and it helped me understand some vocabulary and as well as some grammar. Was it perfect? No, but I could actually manage ordering and understanding, what they were asking of me. A lot of menus are in Italian and English. A lot of waiters do speak some English, which is great. So again, communication wasn't too hard at the restaurants and such. But but yeah, just planning your meals can be, a little bit challenging. Our Airbnb had a kitchen, which was nice because we could buy, fresh food and kind of cook up as well. But we did take advantage of the restaurants in the area. The expense was, I would say, moderate. There's of course expensive, but it wasn't like you could find a super cheap meal. So just plan in your budget, plenty of money for food. It was nice when you buy stuff at market. It was considerably cheaper. So if you're looking to save some money, buy stuff at market and cook your own. So with that said, we flew in a little bit too close. I was hoping that we were flying in a day earlier. We actually arrived on Thursday. And I would have liked to have arrived on Tuesday or Wednesday, but we were going to be there for plenty long enough, and my wife couldn't justify taking off more time, which I totally understood. But this race does have altitude to it. You do get over 10,000 feet, and you're up above 9,000 feet quite a bit. So with that said, you want to make sure you're planning your travel out enough so that you arrive plenty of time before. I arrived 3 days before the start, which is right when you're in the trough. You're at your lowest point of acclimatization. Not great to start at that. So I was a little bit concerned with that. And it did pan out a little bit. I could feel when we got higher. I did have some. I could tell we were higher. So not ideal in that case, but again, due to the circumstances, so that's what it was. So. Again, try to plan your travel to be there a little bit earlier than that. It's harder to arrive the day before because there's so much to do in planning for this and organizing for this. So, really tough to kind of get in that. And it's such a long race that, you'd hit your trough during the race if you try to do that 24-hour window. Because the winners are doing this in just over 3 days. So, the mortals are more of the 4 to 5 day range. So you're going to be hitting your trough in the middle of the race, which is tough. Again, plan accordingly. Try to get there a little bit earlier if possible. It is really hard not to get caught up in the area and want to get out there because it is such a beautiful area. Courmayeur is the halfway point of the UTMB race. Such a beautiful, beautiful place. We fortunately, since I did not finish, got to go up on the gondola and see the Mont Blanc Massif. So gorgeous, so beautiful. We really enjoyed that day. Grateful for that opportunity, not getting to finish. Like I said, I got to do some other things and enjoy the area. But the day before on Saturday, the Tour de Glaciers 450K actually starts on Friday. The first race starts on Friday. The Tour de Geants starts on Sunday. So Saturday was your packet pickup and bag drop off. You can drop off your bag the day of if you so desire. You have to drop off your bag at the sports center, which is it's a bit away from the starting area. So we made sure that everything was done on Saturday. So what happens is I believe you could go as early as, I think it was 11:30 in the morning there, and you would get a number. And they had this website that you would go to, and it showed what numbers they were giving out the packet pickup information to. So in other words, in order to retrieve your bib, you got a number, and then your number, you just watched the website, and it told you what number was able to go pick up their packet. So we went and grabbed something to eat and just watched the website until my number was up. Then we went in. Now, the thing I did not remember or know, and actually Rachel told me and then I forgot, was that if you plan on renting a GPS unit, you have to have 100 euros in cash. That's your deposit in case you forget to turn it back in or it gets lost, stolen, or damaged, whatever it may be. That's your deposit. So if you're planning on renting a GPS unit, which is a good idea, bring 100 euros in cash with you to packet pickup so that you can give them that deposit. They do not accept any other form of payment. So I had to frantically call my wife and have her come over. Thankfully, she had 100 euros on her, and we were able to do that because the nearest ATM was not nearby. So I was grateful for that. They do have somebody that spoke pretty good English. The person I was with, she did not, so we had to have kind of some separate conversations to make sure that we were all on the same page. But that went pretty seamlessly, getting my, aside from the cash. But aside from that, yeah, getting everything was just fine. It was easy. They give you your bag. So the way that the Tor de Geants works is you're given a duffel bag. Now, I don't know how they expect you to fit all of your stuff in this duffel bag. This duffel bag is supposed to be your drop bag for 200 plus miles. It travels to 5 life bases or 6 life bases. So in other words, it's about every 50K, you'll get to this drop bag and you can resupply from your drop bag. This duffel was not big enough to really carry all of the mandatory equipment that it suggested and your race nutrition, hydration, extra stuff that you need. So that was very challenging, trying to figure out what to put in there and what to give to my crew, because if I missed them somewhere and had to rely on that bag, then I had to make sure I had enough in there. But yeah, like I said, it was very difficult because I could barely fit a pair of shoes and everything else that they were suggesting. The duffel bag was pretty small. Now, I understand there's over 1,000 of these bags that they have to transport. So I get it. There's only a minimal amount of space for travel, but it's something to consider for yourself. Like a lot of people were able to just manage off of like the aid stations and the life bases. There are so many aid stations and life bases. The problem is it takes so long in between each because of the elevation, gain, and descent and technicality of the trail. So it's difficult just to manage your race nutrition and hydration in this. Again, you'd have to carry for about 50K if you're relying off that bag, and that bag has very limited amount of space. So, quite a bit of a challenge. Having a crew there was very advantageous because they could get to some of the refugios. Those are little mountain cabins up in the mountains that serve as aid stations, but they also have their own kitchens. So you can actually pay for food if there's something that you really want that they have, up there at the refugios. They also had some beds. Some of the refugios they did not want you sleeping at, whereas others it was permissible. So, I carried a credit card and some euros with me as a just in case if I got to a refugio where my crew wasn't and I wanted to buy something else. So just as a heads up, you can do that at the refugios as well as at the life bases. They did have stuff for sale at the life bases. The life bases are typically in the more major towns. So your crew, if they're there, they can, buy some food in the area if restaurants are open. Again, hours vary and you're getting in at all sorts of times during the day and night. So, planning accordingly is tough. I know, a lot of people are like, oh, you can get a great pizza here. Well, it depends on what time of day you arrive there and as to getting a pizza and how cold it will be by the time the runner gets there. So that's a challenge as well. But the drop bag was an extreme challenge. I was grateful to have crew there so that I could provide them with some of the extra stuff that I couldn't fit in my drop bag, and as well as some of my race nutrition. So again, something consider in your planning for Tor de Geants, if you were to take on this race is how to get your supplies to yourself. Cause the duffel, like I said, just, between the mandatory stuff that needed to be in there and, trying to fit in some more stuff that you have, it's challenging. It's very difficult. So, we got the bag, we went back to the apartment, kind of separated everything, made our plan for what goes in the drop bag and what I was giving to my crew. And then we brought that back and dropped it off, and then went and got some dinner. So, Jason was smart. He had done it the year before, and he brought everything that he wanted to put in his drop bag with him. which was extremely smart. I would suggest doing that. So if you're driving to the packet pickup, just load everything up in your car that you want to try to get into that drop bag. That way you don't have to make a separate trip like we did. Thankfully we had the car, and went back and forth in the car. We rented a Volkswagen 7-passenger van, and it was diesel and a manual transmission. We saved on a little bit of money by renting a manual transmission. It did great. It drove all over the place and did great. Some of those roads are very tight and turn. Not a lot of space, especially if another vehicle's coming. So, you have to take that into consideration for your crew as to what you rent and what kind of space they need. We wanted them to be able to be comfortable, and if they needed to take a nap, they could put the seats down. And we brought some inflatable kind of camping pads with us, as well as like some sleeping bags and some rumble blankets, so that they would be comfortable. So some things to consider for your crew. I also brought a shoe dryer. I talked about that in the gear episode of this, to plug into the power outlet in the van in case my shoes were wet and we needed to dry them out. We brought plenty of charging cords. And I think the thing that was difficult is that the charging ports in the vehicle were all USB-C. Which is cool, it's up to date, but at the same time, a lot of my charging cords for like my headlamp and such were still USB. So we had to kind of plan accordingly as to how we were going to work our way around that if I needed to charge my cords. So again, something to take into consideration. A lot of people were getting into the Refugios and Life Bases, and they were charging there. So you can use those to charge your phone, charge your headlamp battery, charge your watch, whatever you need. You can do there, as well as, of course, carry a backup battery with you. But something for your crew to consider is making sure that they have the appropriate cords for the vehicle. Okay, so vehicle was great. It did well. Again, parking is challenging within Courmayeur and these villages and such. Some places had great parking, but again, just be prepared for some challenging 3-point turns or turnarounds or parking. It can be quite challenging in the valley itself. It's good to know the traffic signs ahead of time too. So, letting your crew know what's permissible and what not. There are actually, certain signs that tell you, beyond this point, you can't drive. And it's easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for. So I would have your crew kind of familiarize themselves with the traffic signs, of Italy, just so they don't get in any trouble. So, just a heads up there. And like I said, we got everything in, got dinner, got back, got a good night's rest, as good as I could. And again, I had a 12 p.m. start, so wasn't really a rush in the morning. We went and grabbed a cappuccino and like a little bit. We cooked up some breakfast at the house. We bought some eggs and some ham and some toast, some bread to toast. So it was nice. We kind of had our own breakfast and relaxed and went out and grabbed a coffee, and it was a chill morning. It really was. I was pretty relaxed going into it. I really didn't have to do much. So far as my gear goes, I ended up going with the Ultra Aspire Zygo 6. I like the fit and function of the Fuga pack, the Kailas Fuga pack. But it really, I had that thing stuffed to the max, and it with all the stuff that was in there between my rain jacket and the down puffy, it just felt like it was too much for that pack and kind of made it a little bit more uncomfortable than I was prepared for. The other part of it too, the other consideration was that when I started thinking about how much time it would take between refilling for water, I was a little concerned with the Kailas pack because the pouches for the bottles only hold the 500 milliliter flasks. So I was a little bit uncomfortable and leery with that. So I thought about going with the tweener and taking the Solomon Advanced Skin, which I usually use. but the capacity of the Zygos, as well as the capacity to have those 27 fluid ounce bottles, it just won out. I found a different way to cinch it and made it tighter to my body so it didn't bounce as much, recognizing that there were some adjustments that I hadn't been using. So starting, I was much more comfortable with the Zygos and knowing that I had plenty of fluids. So I went with the Zygos. I ended up starting with the Lecky poles just because I just like that shark system. I just felt more comfortable. It was one more thing I wasn't going to think about, so I used the Lecky poles, and they ended up being okay. I put on my waterproof gloves, and then I put the shark gloves on over my waterproof gloves, and it worked just fine. So ended up working out with the Lecky poles. I brought both the Lecky and the Black Diamond, but I ended up going with the Lecky poles, and really I was pleased with both my pack decision and with the pole decision. So, at 12 o'clock, well, I got there probably about 11:30 into the corral and just kind of stood there, and everybody's taking pictures and so many languages being spoken. It's pretty cool just to stand there thinking about what's about to transpire, right? So, they're just very much like UTMB. They got the music pumping. They've got these people over the loudspeaker trying to pump everybody up. So it was definitely tough to keep the emotions in check. But as time passed, we were getting ready to go. You take off through the streets of Courmayeur. You've got a good section of road prior to hitting the trail. Every video I had watched kind of shows the log jam and the Congo line that forms. So, I got out pretty decently and caught up with Jason Tishner, and we ran to the trailhead together and got onto the trail. We didn't have to wait at the trail. We got out fast enough that we didn't have to wait at the trail. We basically just got right in. We were in a Congo line, but it didn't matter at that point. It was good temperatures, decent. I was sweating a lot. But the first climb, it just, I tried to settle in and just kind of, get into the mentality of what I needed to do, start thinking about how much do I need to drink? When should I eat? That kind of thing. Just trying to really focus on the moment, and not be thinking about, everything that was to come. So the first climb, it was, it's just as Jason described it, this long grind, because, you're in this Congo line and it just lasts for a good long time. We were hiking for quite some time before we finally hit the col, or the summit of that climb. And then we ran down the other side, which was awesome. There's probably, it kind of spread out at that point. There was only about maybe 5 of us in this little pack together. And we ran down to the first aid station. Now, at the col, they were supposed to have a water stop. That's what was advertised. It wasn't there. The water stops that were advertised at the cols, I think I saw one of them. In the 40 miles that I ran, there were supposed to be numerous, and I only saw one. And they didn't have much. These are little kind of plexiglass cubes that a helicopter brings up with 2 volunteers and what they need to stay for the duration of their shift. And like I said, there were quite a few that just did not materialize. They were not there for whatever reason, and it was not told to us that they would not be there. So gratefully, I carried a water filter, and I did use it. I used it about 3 times in between because I was running out of fluid. So that's later than this first aid station. At the first aid station, I grabbed a little bit of food. The food is kind of interesting. They had kind of a like a pastry cake, almost like a pie, like a fruit tartlet, if you will. It wasn't bad. And then there was almost like a Twinkie. It wasn't filled with cream. It was just like the kind of spongy cake, if you will. They had those. They had some bread, some cheese, some prosciutto, some salami. It's typical aid station fare that you would find in Europe. It's not what we normally have here in the U.S. They did have some cookies, but again, not a lot of stuff that we typically see here in the U.S. So something to know ahead of time. when you approach the aid station as to what to expect, because that caught me by surprise back when I did UTMB. I knew what to expect this time, but for those of you that have not had the opportunity to race in Europe, it is much different at the aid stations and the availability of what they have. So grabbed what I needed, refilled my bottles there, and we had a continued descent. I will say that I didn't think I was going fast, but I was already starting to feel my quads, which was a little bit, alarming to feel my quads this early in the race. We were, kind of just getting to, 10 to 12 miles and already feeling my quads. I was a bit surprised, a bit taken aback, and a little bit concerned. That ran us down into the town of, I believe, Thule, and Beth and Nathan were there, which was, it was great to see them. Now, with crewing here, they give you one crew pass. You're only supposed to have one crew member in the crew area at a time. And the crew area is separate from the aid station area. The crew is not allowed in the aid station area, so they can't go and fill your bottles. They're not allowed anywhere near the runner tables, like we do have here in the U.S., where like a crew member can go and fill up bottles and such. That's not permitted in the Tor de Geants. You are only allowed in this crew area, this crew tent, which is separate. As I said, there's some tables that are set up. It's usually just an open air tent. There's no heat or anything like that. So we kind of I grabbed some of the stuff that I needed from them and proceeded into the tent and hit basically the runner aid station portion and refilled my bottles, and then continued on. It was like a slight uphill. Jason kind of passed me here and ran ahead. He was running the uphills pretty well. I chose to kind of hike at that point. And this next climb took us, pretty high. It was absolutely insanely beautiful. There's some beautiful, beautiful waterfalls, just some great views. There's also a lot of hiker traffic, which a lot of times we don't consider. These popular areas are, obviously they're really attractive for others to go visit. So there were a lot of people on the trail. So I was, constantly moving aside. They're trying to cheer you on and be cheerful, but you kind of feel obligated to say something back, which is a little bit mentally exhausting when you have so many people passing, in the opposite direction. I did filter on my way up there. I had come out of the aid station with full 27-ounce bottles, and I was dry going up. So I refilled on the way up. I was using one bottle of just water and one bottle of liquid IV. We did half a dose because the temperatures weren't so hot, but even at that, on this climb, I threw up. This is again, just like at Western States early in the race, probably around mile 15, and I threw up. And I don't know. I was frustrated, of course, like, why am I throwing up? And so, I said, well, maybe it's the electrolytes. So I just stuck to water, for a little while, and my stomach did settle down. But to be problem solving again so early was quite frustrating, because it was just a few miles later that, I started cramping. And this was much earlier than at Western States. Again, something was not right on race day. And, we'll talk about post-fact thoughts and concerns and things that, we've kind of gone through. To be throwing up, thankfully I got that under control, but then I started cramping, and, I couldn't figure out like the balance, between getting enough electrolytes and getting enough fluids and not pushing hard so that, my legs wouldn't cramp, but my calf muscles were wriggling. I could literally see my calf muscles wriggling. Again, something, was just off, and, my body was stressed. To have my quads already hurting, by mile like 12, throwing up at 15, and then cramping by 18, it's just, I really had to go to the well mentally to kind of like get through this, and not be overly frustrated. I had a long section between when I was going to see my crew next, so I just had to like kind of put my head down and kind of work and try to resolve what was going on. Thankfully, the cramps subsided. From there, it was another relentless climb, followed by a really a pretty decent descent. And my legs were really starting to feel it, unfortunately. The quads were getting worse. I cramped like 2 more times on separate occasions. One was pretty significant, going up a really, really tough climb. So I sat down, kind of pulled out my pack. It was getting cold. It was getting dark. So I pulled out my lights and my waterproof gloves and my rain jacket because it was starting to sprinkle, and I was getting a little bit chilled. So I just took a seat on the side of the mountain. It had been like my adductor that had cramped. And so I took a moment just to sit there, let my legs relax, drink some fluids, have some calories, and just enjoy the scene, because now that it was getting dark, I could look back at the descent we had just come off of, and it was a stream of headlights. At the bottom of that climb was a great little aid station. They had these, it's almost like a soup. It has, I'm not sure what the broth was, but we'll call it a chicken broth. But it had little kind of ziti noodles with some beans and some vegetables. It was quite tasty, and it went down really quick. I also downed a little bowl of pasta as well. It is a cup-free race, so you do have to carry a cup. They did have bowls for the soup and for the pasta, just as a heads up. But yeah, if you want fluids, you need to have your own cup, which was fine. I carried, my cup. I liked what the RD at High Lonesome had suggested, and I found them on Amazon. I believe I posted a link on the last show notes when I talked about the gear, but they've got like a metal rim so that if you do pour hot fluid in there, you can hold the cup without burning your hand, because the silicone cups, obviously, they don't do much to protect you from heat. So anyway, the aid station was great, and I thought I was fine, and then I started the next climb, and that's when I cramped again and kind of pulled aside and just got my stuff out, kind of just took inventory of what was going on, what was transpiring, got my lights all situated, and got my coat on. I will say that gore jacket that I used, I think the wrists were too tight. I really couldn't pull it down to see my watch, and it kind of restricted my movement because of how tight the wrists were, because it was pulling on my watch when I used my poles. So not quite sure if maybe I should have went a size up on that gore jacket. I believe I got a large, and maybe I should have gotten an XL. So not quite pleased with that gear choice, but it did kept me dry, and it kept me warm. So served a very valuable function, obviously. So anyhow, with that, got myself together, and then got up and then continued the climb. The climb became one of the most technical climbs I think I've experienced in my career. The rock faces were super challenging. They had ropes fastened to the rocks that you had to hold on to keep yourself, closer to the mountain. So it was, quite a steep drop off to the side. Going up the steps, they kind of built these like rock steps, and it was intimidating, especially with how windy it got towards the top of the col. When we started getting towards the top, and you were able to place your poles. If you picked up your poles, they would blow sideways. That's how windy it was. So very, very challenging conditions towards the top with how windy it got. Coming down the other side. It was really, it was beautiful, but it was super steep. The switchbacks were just super tight. You would go back and forth, and I was trying to turn my feet sideways to take some pressure off my quads. Oh, excuse me. This is sorry. That was a little bit later in the race, but I did come down into the life base. That's what I hit next. That was at the 50K mark. I did make it to the 50K mark, and I was in a bad spot because I had just come off that descent. My quads were just destroyed. My legs hurt so bad. Coming down that descent. I apologize, I got ahead of myself. So coming down that descent, my quads were wrecked. I watched somebody in front of me take a really bad fall and smash their chest into a rock. I stayed with them for a little bit to make sure they were okay and got going again, and they did. But I couldn't go downhill fast. My quads were just they were so tight and so much pain. So I got into the aid station and I was quite frustrated. I saw my wife, and again, we were in this crew area in this tent, and it's the middle of the night, and I just start shivering. It's pretty standard for me. I run pretty warm, and then as soon as I stop, my core temperature drops and I start shivering. So, kind of shivering. They're trying to put blankets on me. They have me down on the ground. My wife's trying to give me a quad massage to kind of loosen them up. But I was shivering too bad, and so they said, why don't you go see if you can get a massage and from the massage therapist, because this life base was massive. They had, basically like these huge event tents, multiple tents. One was for your drop bag. You picked it up there, and then they had the aid station, food and drinks there. And then they had another one that was just set up with the massage therapists and the cots. So I took my rumple and went in there. I grabbed another blanket and just threw those on top of me, kind of wrapped one underneath me, put a blanket underneath me, a blanket on top of me, and my rumple over me as well. And just tried to rest and get maybe a little bit of a nap and warm back up, because they wouldn't do a massage until I stopped shivering. So finally stopped shivering, laid there for a good little bit. I did fall asleep and got up and they gave me a massage. But when I got on the table, the massage therapist was like, "Oh," he's like, "Not good." He was acknowledging that my quads were not in good shape, which kind of wreaked havoc on me mentally. So he did what he could. I got off the table and kind of gave me the good luck, which again was not reassuring. So went back to my wife and Nathan at the crew area, and the guy next to me. I was kind of out of it. I was really, again, I was not in a good mental space. I was definitely on the verge of crying. Just because my race was going sideways and it was so early, and I'd never been in this situation so early in a race. Here we are 50K in and my legs aren't working. I've already thrown up and cramped. So frustration was at a tipping point. And like I said, I was on the verge of tears, and the guy next to me, he's like, "Well, if you thought that was hard, the next section's even harder, and the section after that is even harder than that," which really broke me down. And that's when I started, I couldn't hold my tears back anymore. I let it all out. This is where I think, emotionally, just with everything that's transpired between, two deaths of people that are extremely close to me, my son going to college, the DNF at Western States, it all just kind of culminated, and I let it out. My frustrations with, how things were going, that, these past few months and how I felt at the moment. It was hard to rein it back in. My wife did her best to say, "Hey, you just keep moving forward. That's all you can do." And I said, I felt like at that moment I couldn't. I was weak. I was very weak at that moment, and my legs weren't working, and I was tired, extremely tired. As I said, for some reason that day was just not my day, and I was really frustrated because I knew I had more days ahead of me of trying to do the same thing. And I think what ultimately really intimidated me was this was going to be solo. I was going to have to do potentially 3 more nights solo, and nights are the hardest time, when you can't see the views around you and everybody's tired and they don't want to talk. Especially since there's such a language barrier. I had just gone through a night and it was going horribly wrong, and I was going to face 3 more of those potentially, and it just overwhelmed me. I'll have to admit, I was not prepared for the loneliness that transpires during the night. Usually in an event by, some point you can look forward to having company, a pacer, a friend, a loved one with you. In this race, that doesn't happen. Sure, you may come upon somebody or somebody that you can talk to a bit, but it's not the same. They're not going to keep the same pace as you or stay with you. It's definitely, that was challenging, and I'll admit I was not ready for that. And that's what, seemingly overwhelmed me the most, was the fact that I had that ahead of me. I couldn't stay in the moment. I couldn't stay present because of everything that was going on, and that being at the forefront, just, putting me into a state of just misery, really. As hard as that is to admit, I really was not prepared for that portion, that mental challenge. Wasn't something that I considered beforehand, and thinking about it post fact, if I were to do it again, and face it as a solo challenge alone, I think I would probably take a few days camping, maybe take 2 camping trips in which I spend 3 days alone, out in somewhere remote where, I'm not going to really come upon many people. I'm going to have to sleep alone, that kind of thing, just to kind of prep myself for something like that, because that was something that I had not considered. And I, as probably am very... I need people. I need contact. I need that peace around me in order to feel comfortable. It's just who I am, and being alone, for that duration and in that state was not something that I was prepared for. So, I definitely had a breakdown at that aid station, and, my wife did her best to kind of talk me through it and get me back out there. So I said, okay, I didn't come here to stop here. I'll do my best. My quads felt a little bit better after the massage. I went back into the life base and I ate some food and drank some Coke and, tried to wrap my brain around moving on. So I grabbed my drop bag and grabbed what gear I needed, changed my shirt, threw one of my smart wools on to kind of have a warmer base layer, and used the restroom, and then dropped my drop bag off, checked out, and texted my wife saying that I was heading out because they had no way of knowing when I was leaving. So texted them, let them know I was heading out. Got going, and immediately you face another climb. The course is relentless, up and down. That's what this course is made of. So came out of the life base and started heading right back up, and what happened, but I cramped. Almost immediately upon the climb, I started cramping again, and I called my wife again in tears because I was already cramping and I didn't know how I was going to keep moving forward. I had 9 miles till I would see them again, and I hadn't even made it a mile, and I was already cramping and hurting and tired. And like all I wanted her to do was to tell me to come back, but she said, just try to slow down, keep going. If you need us to, it's not far for us to come back here if you need to come back, but see if you can make it. And the next station was Notre Dame. Again, she knew, she's like, you have a really big climb ahead of you and then a really big descent. And so, I faced it. I said, okay, let's see what the body can tolerate. So I slowed down and just found pace behind another runner. And we kind of, I think he was from France, and, we didn't speak. We just kind of trudged. We seemed to be, kind of wallowing in the same self-loathing, if you will. So made our way up. I think he was tired is really what it was, because we got to a refugio in between, the life base and where I would see Beth and Nathan next, and he ended up going in the refugio to sleep. I just had some food and some drinks, refilled my bottles, kind of was doing okay. Like at that point I had kind of committed to continuing. I wasn't cramping, slowing down. I was taking care of nutrition and hydration. So I was trying to turn it around, and mentally I was getting there. I will say that, my mental resiliency, my mental fortitude was regained after I had got through that refugio. They had some really good dark chocolate, which was awesome. It was kind of refreshing, and I felt better about myself. Not 100%. I'm not going to say I was 100%, but I was definitely in a better spot. I was in a better place. What I did was, I kept moving forward and, kind of gave myself, the wherewithal, the permission, if you will, to acknowledge that I was not in a good place, but this is what the challenge was. And I needed to do everything I could to be smart about it so I could keep moving forward. I got away from the refugio and I started getting sleepy. I was like, oh my gosh, I was just doing just fine. And all of a sudden I felt sleepy again. So, I just, kept moving. It was again, another big climb. So going up, a friend found me, Michael, who I refer to in what I will read to you here shortly. And Michael was wonderful. And this is kind of where, I get into this story here that I'll read to you. All right. So, I'm going to read, this is the update that I put out there. Physically, I have pain at the moment. Mentally, I've second-guessed myself 1,000 times in the last week. The question repeated in my mind, could I have kept going? We look to the past for answers, searching for the elusive peace that will make us feel whole again and to end the uncertainty. Those around us embrace us and tell us there was nothing more you could do. You couldn't have continued. But could I have? Should I have? And to what end? And to what endangerment of my own well-being? How much did this race mean to me? When we add the time spent training, the focus on nutrition and hydration, the money spent on the race itself, as well as the gear and travel, it makes the answers harder to determine. You had a concussion and broken bones. What else could you have done? The answer was to take one more step. I could have, sure. Again, should I have? The uncertainty of that moment eats away at me. I had to put myself back in the moment. It was just before dawn and still dark. We were on an extremely long and steep rocky descent. My quads were in pain. My leg muscles were seizing, spasming, and cramping. I had vomited at mile 15 and had leg cramps at 18. My quads were shot by 50K, and the massage therapist gave me little hope they would revive themselves. As fate, cosmic resonance, divine intervention, and or simple luck would have it, a person, more than a person, a friend was put in my path, Michael, a little ray of light in the darkness, as he, just as I and everyone else at that point, wore a headlamp. As sleep tried to take over my struggling body, we talked and laughed about the absurdity of the situation, how our quads hurt, and what we each had been through. I realized this was how I was supposed to feel. I had regained my resolve. My mind was made up. I would keep going. I let Michael go as I had a cramp in my inner thigh from sliding on the downhill. I was taking my time so as to limit how much I would shock I would give my quads. I had been turning my feet sideways to try and use other muscles on this descent. When I thought the grade was safe enough, I changed my foot strike position to straight ahead. As soon as I did, my foot plant slid straight out from under me, and straight back I fell. I can still remember the impact, the feeling of losing control. I didn't even have time to brace or truly react. I hit the ground hard. Unfortunately, it was a large rock that met my body and sent the message to my brain that damage had been done. I laid there for a moment and tried to take inventory of what was hurt. 2 runners came by and did a brief check on me, but kept going. I turned to the side that hadn't been injured and laid there for a moment to once again assess my situation. Could I get up? What hurt the most? I answered the first question by standing. The second question was almost simultaneously answered in completing the first. My head was throbbing, not a good sign. I rested over my poles and closed my eyes for a moment, worried about the rest of my body. I was not seriously bleeding, but I assumed I had a concussion. I went through my basic first aid training and decided it best to get to the next aid station as soon as possible. My wife and friend would be waiting for me there, and I could seek medical attention. Once I arrived, my wife got me inside, checked me in, and helped me find the doctor, who was sleeping. I was having a very hard time with the light and needed to squint or close my eyes as my head was splitting. The doctor didn't look me over much and just told us I needed to go to the hospital. There wasn't much to say. The decision had been made for me. My bracelet was cut off, and the race was over, just like that. I didn't plead or bargain. I just accepted it. A head injury wasn't something I wanted to debate with either the doctor or my wife, also a doctor. Fast forward to the golden hour, on the very last day of the Tor Geants. I had continued to question so many things. I was making it all about me. It wasn't until, with 3 minutes to spare before cutoff, there came charging the last official finisher. Tears welled up inside me. I was overcome with the emotion the finishers felt. I was so happy for him. It changed my perspective. Many didn't finish, my friend Michael included amongst them as well, but many did. We can choose to celebrate many things. First and foremost, the opportunity to be out there. Secondly, the community that supports anyone that took part in this race. Third, if we truly want to, there will be another shot at coming back to finish the tour. My wife asked me if it hurt to watch the finishers. I was honest and told her it did. But between the day I fell and the finish... But between the day I fell and the finish that we were then watching, I heard many stories of others that did not reach the finish line. While the DNF leaves us emotionally hurt, it remains vital to our own personal growth. Without failure, what would success feel like? Without pain, what would bliss feel like? Life has its balances. I designed a new tattoo I'm contemplating. In the background is the yin and the yang. On the right, a wolf, a symbol of my youth and my time running at NC State and post-collegiately. On the left, an ibex, a mountain goat, for what I have become in my most recent years. Two very different animals, but each a distinctive part of a larger collective. We are all part of a larger collective. Each of us, whether we know it, acknowledge it, and or accept it, are a part of a community. You are admired by, as well as admire someone. You are respected by, as well as respect someone. You are loved, as well as I bet you love someone. When we remember others, when we ourselves hurt, it is easier to see our way through the pain and hurt we feel, emotionally and physically. When we seek others' support, we oftentimes find comfort. When we look deep inside, through the pain, through the doubt, we oftentimes grow as humans. Onward, forward, let's grow together. I wrote that on September 21st, soon after, again, not even a week after not finishing the Tor de Geants. That fall has left a lot of questions. And those questions are tough to answer. Would I want to do this race again? There's a lot that has to go into that answer. And while my mind wraps itself around what events have transpired since the tour and during the tour, I can't give a straight answer. Coming back here to the States, it was very difficult to really wrap my head around the time away. There are so many things that are so important that are going on at this time of year. My daughter and her races and the team, my own athletes that are doing their own events. It's really hard to take that time away right now and justify doing the tour again anytime soon. And so my thought process, and I have not made any sort of decision on it, is to wait until after my daughter finishes high school to consider doing this event again. While, a DNF is really tough to swallow, especially, being the Western States and Tor de Geants, I have to wonder, what else can I do to make my body feel like it can do these events again? And that's something that my wife and I have discussed and continue to discuss as to, some things that can contribute to the things that are going on. What has changed so much since I ran Bigfoot in 2021? One of them being my body weight. I've gained 20 pounds, which puts a lot more stress on my lower extremities, especially on the downhills. So in this time when I'm healing, my focus is on making sure that I'm eating healthy and not overeating, and potentially trying to, reduce my weight as I get healthy and try to reapproach running. The other part of it is I do have a gluten allergy, but I have not been good about being gluten-free. So potentially my body could be telling me that I'm having too much gluten. So it's something that I'm considering in my diet as well. Another piece is that I didn't have the strength training component that I did for Western States. I've reached back out to Coach Will France, and as soon as my body is healed, then hopefully we'll restart the strength training aspect. I don't have any goals for the rest of the year. I need my body to heal and kind of get back to health. So I'm going to hold off on worrying about what other races I'm missing right now, and what I want to do next year. And these are conversations I want to have with my wife. I feel that I'm at a point in my life where it's really difficult to add races to my calendar anymore because of everything else that's going on and the responsibilities that I have. And I think that creates stress, a lot of stress, more stress than I care to admit. I don't want, training for a race and doing a race to be stressful. I want it to be enjoyment. But I'm recognizing that that's not happening. I'm not in a good mindset because I feel like there's too much that needs to be happening and needs to be done, even if I, manage my workload prior. And that's a tough realization. So I need to figure out how to circumnavigate that, how to circumvent and figure out what can I do that won't stress me out, that will, allow me to enjoy this sport. Be it just doing some routes that I've wanted to do for a long time, and maybe do a shorter event, maybe do another event, but see if I can figure out a way that it doesn't stress me out, that I feel like I have to worry about, getting in the training as well as, preparing for this event. So a lot of conversations need to be had with my wife, and figure out, what's going to be fulfilling, because I want to make sure that I feel fulfilled and enjoy the sport that I still love so much, but not cause stress and undue stress, So as much as it pained me, again, physically and emotionally to not be able to complete the tour, I learned a lot. And there were, so many beautiful pieces of that event, the course. It's extremely challenging. There's really nothing that can prepare you for what you face over there. The ascents and the descents are just so long and so steep and so much vertical gain and descent. It's really challenging to kind of prepare the body for what you'll face there. As well as for the amount of fatigue, both mentally and physically, that you face on that course. Obviously Rachel did it, but she definitely was done at the end. She was so tired, and that made me realize, do I want to put myself through all of that? Is it worth it? And that's a valid question, right? Like it's funny to say it out loud, but it truly is. Do we want to put ourselves through all that? So again, there's a lot of questions that I've left unanswered. And not that I discourage anyone from attempting this event, because it is an amazing event, but it is one of those events that you really need to be, mind, body, spirit, and engaged 100%, and committed to. It's a challenge. I spoke to so many people that, they said that I've had 2-3 DNFs before I finally got my finish. And some people do it on their first try, like Rachel, which is incredible. And she's 2 for 2. It's amazing. But the reality is, I don't know. I don't know. Usually we have that feeling after a DNF that we want to go back and accomplish and finish the race that we started. But, again, it's a big question mark, and I don't know. So I'm glad I have time to think about it and to reflect and to contemplate. Right now, I'm again just healing, going for some walks with my dogs, but it will be some time before I'll be able to run again. The bones that broke, we can't do anything about them, but just give them time. The bones being my scapula or my shoulder blade and 2 of my ribs. Fortunately they're up higher on my back, so it's not as painful to breathe and do some daily activities. I'm grateful for that. But I still have to be very limited about like what I'm lifting and what I'm doing. So, time will heal, and that's what we have to do, is be patient, which is tough. And but some valuable lessons were learned, and I hope you took away some things from this adventure of mine. And I really appreciate all of the words of kindness and support. I love everyone, and I'm grateful for all of you and this opportunity. So I'm going to sign off for this episode. I hope you are doing well, and if I can help in any way, please let me know. If you're interested in coaching, please reach out. All of the ways to do so are in the show notes, and I'll be happy to speak with you. So until next time, my friends, keep moving forward. Running is life.